Hi all, welcome to the webinar from the 99X. I'm Sugandhika Amuradasa. I'm working as a performance test lead in 99X. I have around 8+ years of experience in performance testing. Today, I'm going to talk about importance of performance testing in new norm. So let's start with agenda. This is my agenda today. So I am mainly focused on discussing importance of performance testing in new norm. And also I would like to recap of performance testing just to be sure whether you have idea, you will refresh your knowledge with this. And also main focus on this session is to give an idea about how to implement performance testing in your project and what are the main issues you may face with the performance testing. So at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A session. So in during that session, you will be able to ask your questions and feel free to ask any question even middle of the session too. So let's get started. So let's see why performance testing is important in this new norm. The then first we look at what is the new norm is. The new norm is new way of living. So due to this COVID pandemic situation, the way we live, work, and interact with other people has changed. Most of the local and worldwide companies have changed their way of working. As an example, most of the software companies have started working from home, such as Google, Amazon, uh, Facebook kind of companies as well. So with that, for demand for the collaborative system like Zoom, WebEx has increased. Also, not only that, the simply the demand for the online shopping platforms and online contactless deliveries and other online based systems has gone up. So to cope these environment changes, most of the urban organization has introduced the disruptive business model for their organization setups. So in this setup, performance testing play a major role, and because if even if there is a small performance testing issue with your application may cost huge. We will discuss those aspects in future slides. So when it comes to the performance testing, even before this pandemic situation, maintaining the performance testing uh, for your application is challenging. So if we take example of HBO site in 2017, when Game of Thrones season 7 went live, the this website got crashed. So if they have done proper performance testing to cope that issues, so we could have prevent those kind of issues. But with this pandemic situation, there are different kind of issues has arise in terms of performance. Let's take a supermarket chain like Kiehl's and high demanding products like Highland. So those companies have started online promotion suddenly. Then initially, what happened was the online their website and application got crashed due to the high sudden increase of users. So later, when we look at the Keel's website, they have changed their approach of catering customers by introducing queuing and preventing direct access to their application. So this is the great example which we need to perform performance testing before we release our online application into the production. And if there is a situation like this new norm, so this we could predict how many of users we will access this site, and how much of servers, how much of resource we need to cater that user load, and we can handle that behavior with with predictions. So I could conclude that with this information that performance testing is more key factor for this new norm situation, and so that's why we are doing this session to give you an overview how to start, what is performance testing, how to start uh, performance testing in your project, and why we need it, and how we can use it, how we can make it use for our day-to-day life. So why performance testing is important? So if you go through this slide, or you could get an idea. Then the thing we uh, main thing we need to see is what is your application performance is, whether the performance of your application is good, and get an idea about the application performance in terms of responsiveness, capacity, endurability, availability, resource consumption, as well as if there is a potential failure due to the high number of users or sudden increase user load. So we can predict them, and we can cope with soft solution, and we can cope with different architectures and different resource materials, and we can handle that situation. So why it is important? Because we can deal with the upcoming issues before it arises. So if you take an example like responsiveness, so if we are doing a performance test beforehand, we can see how long this application take to respond particular use action. So because of that, performance testing is very important to measure before you go ahead with your application into production. So then what is performance testing is? The performance testing is test you perform on your online application under the particular load. The load mean it can be number of users, it can be number of requests per second, and also by performing that load on your application, you could identify whether there is any performance bottlenecks. It's like high response time, whether there is any memory resource usage, whether there is a memory leak, whether there is a synchronization issues, and you could take corrective action beforehand. And even you can change your architecture, even you can change your way of handling sessions. Likewise, there are a lot of way of for optimizing performance in your application. So also by doing the performance testing, you can get an idea about the quality attributes such as stability, reliability, responsiveness, and the endurability. So, so we will have a recap on performance testing, and uh, give me a sec. Recap on performance testing here onward, and we will freshen up your performance testing knowledge. If you don't have any performance testing knowledge, and if you're beginner, so you could get an idea about what is performance testing with these few slides. So you may have familiar with some performance testing concepts like load testing, stress testing, breakpoint testing, likewise. But if we have a clear idea on what this performance testing type is, you can use these performance testing types better. Let's take an example. As a example, let's see this in this diagram. You can see there are different kind of testing uh, has status based on virtual number of virtual user and against the time. So you can see there's a test called load test in orange color. So what is load test? The load test is the basic level test you may already heard. So in this test, what we are going to do is we are checking whether your application is whether your application can be coped with the maximum number of users that could have with that application. So for the maximum, for we are calling that number of user level is peak load. So peak load is maximum concurrent users that you can have in your application with certain amount of time. So in with this load test, what we are going to do is we will measure whether your application is sustainable enough with this peak number of users. So this test won't take much time. This is normally we conduct this test around from around 20 minutes and to 30 minutes, and we see whether there is any performance bottlenecks like high response time, memory leak, and whether there's abnormal behavior with the application. And if it's successful, we can say that our application is can perform with our application could cater the peak number of users. So likewise, if we take the green color one, the endurance test, and the endurance test is we are trying to measure whether how whether our application can cope uh, uh, some level of users for a long duration of time. So then not like load test, it will take more than that in terms of testing time, but less number of virtual users compared to the load test. So normally we take around 3 to 5 hours for endurance test, but uh, the purpose of doing load test and the endurance test is different. Also, you may heard about a stress test. So a stress test is something you perform on your application to stress your application and see whether there is abnormal behavior. So not like load test or the endurance test, we perform this test until we find any abnormal behavior in this with your system. Let's say our peak load is 1x. Then if we are what we are going to do is we are sustaining our 1x load for a 5 time or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then if we don't have any issue, we what we are going to do is we increase the 1x to 1.5x. Likewise, we are gradually increasing our user load and see whether there is abnormal behavior. So likewise, there are almost I have explained three testing type. Then and those type have different purposes when it comes to the performance perspective. So then there are some special cases like spike test and the breakpoint test. The spike test is something similar, something s- mm, we do with our application uh, by increasing sudden users or decreasing the number of users. So why we are doing is, as I explained the kill scenario, if there is a sudden user load increase or sudden user load decrease, So there can be abnormal behavior in your application, like you couldn't recover your CP with uh, sudden user increase, or you couldn't cope with that users, and your application may crash. So because of that kind of scenarios we can identify with the spike test. And not like all other four tests, the breakpoint test is the extreme case. So you could have increase without considering anything. uh, you anything, you will increase your user load until break your system, and identify where it's break, when it's break, what is the pain point, what is the impact of the system. So those kind of thing we can identify by doing a breakpoint test. So these are the type of tests we are mainly used. But when we do these tests, we could identify the potential performance testing issues. So like whether there is a high response time with any user behavior, like I explained in these tests, and whether there is overload resources, like high response CPU, high memory, uh, whether there is a memory leak, whether there is a synchronization issues, whether there is a network bandwidth issues, or whether there is issue with issues related to database. Likewise, you could identify almost all the performance related issue with these kind of test. So now I hope you have got an idea about the performance testing types. So by doing this testing, we could get some idea about the performance measurements. So uh, it is not enough to do the test. By doing this, we should be able to come into the conclusion of this performance test result. So to do that, we have we are using two performance testing terms: metrics and measurement, which we use for measure during the performance test. And we can calculate those measurement with some calculation, and we can get into the uh, matrices. So these are some of measurements we are collecting when we do the performance testing. uh, Mainly we are collecting time takes to respond to the request, like if you have click on a button, if how long will it take to respond response. And if you have load the page, how long will it take to load that page. Likewise, if you take the throughput per request, so when we send a request to your server, how much data has been transferred from your client to server. And we can see this try read and write, and you can we can measure that using this. We can collect this data while doing the performance test. And also basic data like CPU usage of your application server, memory usage of your application server, network bandwidth utilization, and sometimes we could most of the time we could do use performance database profiling as well. So using these matrices, we can come into the sometimes we can come into the conclusion. But uh, sometimes we can't do that. So because of that we need the matrices. So if I explain why we need a matrix with a simple example, if you are taking a time for a login transaction, uh, if you execute one cycle, you will get a response time of one response time. Let's say it is a first response time. Then if you execute the same test again, you might get a different response time. Likewise, if you are executing for 100 time, there will be 100 samples. So it's not fair to say first one is the correct one. So in that case, what we should know is we should use some calculation. These are the basic mathematic calculation. We what we do is we just average it. Likewise, there are matrices we use in performance testing, so we could get better idea than using measurements. So there are some matrices here with, like peak response time, error rate, 19th percentile response time, requests per second, average throughput. Likewise, these are the matrices we could use when we analyze the performance testing results. And also, we can have some server counters, and code profiling, and also uh, using them also we can came into the conclusion. And also some tools has a graph like network bandwidth utilization, cpu utilization graph, memory utilization graph, and response time graph. Likewise, we have some graphs, and using them also we can come into the conclusion. So conclusions. So far we have talked about what is performance testing, what is performance testing time, why it is important, and also what are the things we are measuring when we do the performance testing. Now we are going to talk about how your mind has to work when we work with the performance testing tool. So for that, I am going to use this example. This is, I have taken this from Lord Runner site. Uh, this is a basic Lord Runner architecture, but this is really useful to explain when we are explaining how performance tests work. Even though there are a lot of performance tools like JMeter, Lord Runner, Epicalot, Neoload, and Performance Center, we all these tool has same concept of working. So I would like to explain that here. So here, and so we'll start with users. So to do a performance test, what we need to have is a script. That's a basic thing we should have when we are performing a performance test. The purpose of having a script is uh, simulate the user behavior as a as a virtual users. Like let's say that I am a user and I am performing a login function. And if I have to perform the same task with multiple users, we can't have a lot of people around and we ask them to do this. So without doing that, what performance testing tool do is we create a virtual user using their script. So for when we are creating a script, we have two main method of uh, creating a performance script. So we use some input data and we use some dynamic data. So we if we are using input data, we call it parameterization. If we are doing a dynamic data, we call it uh, correlation. So using these two technique, we make our recorded script into the virtual users. And if we have a one script, and if you have a list of test data that you could parameterize, we can have we can have multiple users like I explained before. So without having actual physical users. So and also the other main important part is the controller machine. So the what we when we are planning a performance test, we are using this controller machine. In that controller machine, we are set up the user behavior. Then if you remember that I have explained the type of testing, all these testing type we can set up using this controller machine. So let's say that you want to perform a 1x load. Then here you have to give this is the peak load for this application, and you will have to upload your site, your script, and you will set up the user, plan the test according to your expectation. So then in using this controller machine you could execute the test also. So what it does is we just send a request uh, like a virtual users, and get the response and collect results into this machine and give us a raw data as I mentioned before, like measurements and matrices. So let's think, if we are using simulating thousand of users using this the same controller machine, will it stress out or not? Yeah, yes, I think you have an idea, then it will be stressed out. So to avoid that, what we could do is we could use load generators. These load generators also a physical machine, so we could install our load generating agent there. All the performance tools has that. So we can install agent there, and it will work as a user. So it is a physical machine. What we just do is we are installing the agent there, and we are sending command to that agent. Then agent will make the reload on the application server and send back the raw matrices to the controller. And at the end of the test, in the controller we could see graphs, we could see the raw data, we could collect the raw data, and we could conclude the performance testing results using those matrices. So hope you got an idea about the how performance testing tool work so far. S- Please raise if there's any questions. So this is a sample graph you could get using the performance testing tool. This is called page response time graph. And other than that, you could get throughput graphs. You could get the CPU utilization graph. You could get the memory utilization graph. And also you have raw data for these graphs, and you can analyze using these graphs. So even JMeter has some listeners. If you are familiar with JMeter, this graph is same as the listeners you have in JMeter. So so far we have talked about performance testing tool, uh, performance testing tool, performance testing type, importance, and when it comes to the summarizing, if we have a performance testing tool, we can set up our scenario like we discuss as a performance testing type, and we can get measurement, and we can come into the conclusion using these matrices and the graphs. And also we can use measurements sometimes. So with that I have came into the end of performance testing recap. And there one more thing that I would like to discuss with related to this is sorry, we could integrate performance testing with CI/CD as well. The main use of using the CI/CD with the performance testing tool is we can compare the current build with the previous build. Sorry, previous build, and we can have a trending graph like this. So if you're executing your test for the long duration, and you will see if there's a issue in was some point. like this. I hope you can see my pointer. So like this. So if you're this these are the build they have in their release pipeline, and in see when they, with this build they had a huge performance issue. So without getting time to troubleshoot, we can just roll back by doing checking this if there is a performance issue like that. So it is really important if you could integrate with performance testing with CI/CD pipeline. So we also set up with Jenkins, and we also add some Azure pipeline, uh, add some test to Azure pipeline in 99x. So 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 I think I have came into the last part of the performance the session. So in here, I would like to discuss the main challenges we may face when we are trying to start the performance testing in your project. So I am going to ask questions, and I'm the one who are going to answer it also, as this is a online session. So then I think you could get a better idea with that. So the my first question is, when can we start performance testing in our project? So I would like to answer for that question like this. Let's say that you're a developer, and you are going to uh, do a piece of code, and in that piece of code, uh, there is a you want to see whether there is a performance issue. So you could use some profiling there, like using href like of command, profiling command you may aware as a developer. But normally when it comes to the large scale or for performance testing process, we should have a build to start the performance test. So we should have a isolated or scaled down environment to start the performance test, because with any noise there the performance measurements can be vary. And also my second question is, what kind of tool do we need to use for the testing? That will be a main concern when you are new to the performance testing. So I would like to answer that question like this. If you have a if you can see in my screen, there's a server basic server client server diagram. So here I'm showing you that there is a client server environment and database and web server environment. So this is a simple setup that I am using for explain AC. So we can perform performance testing in client side. It's I'm referring that front end level testing. So and also we can do a performance testing in client server base, and also we could do a code level profiling, and we could do a database level profiling, and also we could do some API level testing, performance testing as well. So if you are planning to do a client side testing, your main objective is to find out what would be the client's behavior. So like how long it will take to render the image, and what is the what time will take to execute the JS file. Likewise, that will be your main objective. If it's a for that, there are so many tools available in the market, like Lighthouse, PageSpeed. So even you can use some developer tools as well. And also when it comes to client server application, that is the main test that we are going to perform, and for this is we are having a lot of tool, as I mentioned before, JMeter, load runner, uh, likewise load epica load. Likewise, there are a lot of tool available to do this client server level testing. And the code, even for code profiling, you could use db dot trace, jprofiler, not just js profiler kind of tool, depending on your technology. Likewise, you could based on your requirement, uh, and based on your purpose, if you are going, what we are going to measure is the pain key to select the tool. So hope you got an idea. So I will go into the next question. What information do we need to start the performance testing? So this is the most asked question when we are trying to consult in some project in our 99x. So we are maintaining a document called NFR in each project. NFR in the sense non-functional requirement document. In this document, we are maintaining all the non-functional requirement, like we like a requirement document. So in this document, we can define the scope of the performance testing. So when it comes to the scope of the performance testing, it shouldn't be everything, and it shouldn't be the only the critical functional path. Let's say that you are having an uh, application. The critical path is a selection of selection, maybe a search, and but in that application there is another component which is you are considering not very important, like diary. So but when it comes to the performance testing, most of the users may have log into your application, and they use diary mostly, instead of doing the checking the critical path as you develop. Mm, in that case, our critical performance critical scenario is diary, but we have to check the main functional part as well. So likewise, we have to define the performance scope, and we have to identify the critical workflow of the application. When it comes to the identify critical workflows, you should have been performance testers mindset. And also we should have TPS or user load, and like I mentioned before, the peak, we should have identified the peak load, and also that should be mentioned in the NFR. And also we could define the max resource utilization and CPU memory utilization and network bandwidth before start the test as a baseline. So we can keep this information as a baseline and threshold value, and we could do a test, and we could compare that the results against this baseline. So hope you got an idea about that. And the last most important part is how we analyze the performance test. So when it comes to the analysis, what we could do is we could analyze again. Let's say that we are analyzing the response type, and we have defined our baseline response time before we start the test in the NFR, and we can do a comparison against the baseline. But if you don't have something to compare with, what you can do, so what you can do is you can ask from your customer. If you are a service based company, so you can ask from your customer and product owner what would be the expected response time for this feature, and you could compare against that. Or either you can use industry standards, like if you are For web pages, it will be around 3 seconds. For API, it will be around 1 second normally, but it's not something strict. So likewise, you could have a baseline and you can compare those your test results against that. And also we can have a we can see whether it is a improvement or the deviation by averaging by checking those variance baseline of baseline and the after change. Also, we can break down the response time. So if I am explaining it further, then let's say that you are having a deviation. So, and you are in that transaction, there are multiple requests. In if you are break down that response time of each of these requests, you will get what request has cost a lot of time. So likewise, you could have a response time breakdown. Also, we can have errors, check the error rate, and let's say if you are having 550% errors when it compared to the when you do the when you analyze in the results, so it is definitely an invalid test. Your test error rate should be less than 3% at least. Not that also not the strict one, but it should it good to keep a low level of response time error rate, and there can be error like that also. And also, with all of these measurements, what we are going to identify is whether there is any bottleneck. So we can then, when we are analyzing the graphs and when we are analyzing the matrices, straight away you could see if there is a issue in the sense, but what we are analyzing is the pattern of usage in that particular test duration. So in if there's a change of pattern, so then there will be definitely an issue with the application. So, and the last and but not least, there is another one question which I want to discuss before I conclude the session. So, do small project need to do a performance testing? If and if yes, why we do? Why? So most of the people think that we don't need to do a performance test for a small scale project. Like if you have a 10 user, you don't need to do that. But let's see the example like Kills. So they had the low number of users with their application, but if there is a disruptive things happen like this COVID new norm, then there will be a huge requirement and we don't know how to handle that. Then if it's a if you couldn't cope with that, what will happen is you will not be able to, you may have to rearrange your all your application. It will be a cost huge. So so with that, uh, I would like to conclude the session. So in this session, I have talked about what is the importance of performance testing in new norm, what is the performance testing uh, types, and what are the how we are measuring the performance testing results and how we are analyzing it, and what kind of tool that we are going to use. And I hope with this session you could have proper understanding about the performance testing. I mean, basic understanding with on performance testing and how we perform that. So it's your time that if there's any question you could ask on that. So I will, if there's any questions, so I could answer. So doesn't seems to be any questions. Looks like everyone is clear about what I have explained. So let's wrap up this session. So please subscribe our 99x channel, so you could see more videos in future. Thank you very much for your participation.